Hope you're well this morning. I wonder how, in your life, your church history, this may be the first church service you've ever been in, and you may have decades of church behind you. I wonder, when you consider worship, what springs to mind. So I want to try and consider that today, tackle that today, see if we can grow our understanding of worship together today, which is why we've moved the sermon so early in the service, to give us enough time afterwards to really step into worship. Jim kicked off a new series for us last week. We're calling it the Christian Walk. We've just identified 3 key areas in the Christian walk that's often misunderstood or aren't talked about enough. So the first of those is spiritual warfare. You know, we can so often assume we physically come to a physical church, sit in a physical chair, sing some audible songs, and thank you very much. There's so much that we do not see in this world. I thought Jim did such a fantastic job last week, kicking us off with spiritual warfare. We're then looking today at worship, and then next week we're going to start looking at fasting, and then we're going to come back around to do spiritual warfare, worship, fasting, and come back around one more time. So you'll hear 3 sermons on each, and if you miss one, obviously they're online, but nothing dreadful will happen there. You will pick up enough, hopefully, from the other 2. With worship, I'm going to start off by just looking at some foundational and key things within worship. Then next time around, John Bearden will be with us, and he's going to look at worshipping with our whole lives. Then finally, Danny's going to finish it off by looking at how we step into God's presence in worship. That's how we're structuring these 3 worship points. But for me, as a young child, I was in a Baptist church in the Northeast, and I've mentioned that before. And I remember there was a singy bit. That was worship. That was a singy bit. Quite like that. There was a talky bit where someone would stand at the front and talk for a long time, and I didn't like that. And then when we moved down south, we went to an Anglican church for a while, a really great Anglican church, and they had singy bits, talky bits, and ready bits where we had to do a bit of reading and read out things back to the vicar at the front. And that was my understanding. And then we went to a church a bit more like this one. My convictional reason for moving from the Anglican church to the church a bit more like this one was that it was closer to my house, so I could have a lie-in a bit more. And so I would go along to the Bridge Church in St Ives, and there were some people there who threw their hands up in worship, and I thought, oh, they must be really good at worship. And there were some people that interrupted the service by shouting out a prayer, and I thought, they're really, really good at worship, aren't they? And then one time we went to a kind of multi-church gathering in, I want to say Cambridge, it could have been Peterborough. I was fairly young, and there was someone who I was expected to know who he was leading worship. All the grown-ups were exciting because they remembered the 90s, and it was a man called Noel Richards leading worship. Does anyone remember him? Everyone remembers him? Wait. I don't. He was there leading worship, and there was a lady, and she was in the aisle dancing in worship, and I said to my dad, what's she doing? And he went, well, she's worshipping, she's dancing. And I said, well, she should stop. Why is she doing this? And my dad then sat me down, and while Noel crooned on, Dad was like, there's a story in the Bible where David danced, and one of his wives told him off. And do you know what? She could never have children after that, and God was very cross. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't be quite so rude about this poor lady. Okay. And my understanding of worship was just so immature. So I hope we'll be able to kind of break through and move on this morning than where I certainly was. This is what worship is. It's Terry Virgo's line. Worship is the overflow of what is inside of us. And if you look through the Bible, what happens is when people come close to God, the response is worship. I'd start in Exodus 15 as a starting off point, because it's such a clear moment of worship. There's this incredible moment which is foundational to who God is and his relationship with the people of Israel, the Exodus. We've all heard about it. Non-Christians know all about the Exodus. People trapped in slavery and bondage in a nation of darkness escape through the Lord's provision. He brings them out of slavery and bondage. Not only that, and often a missed point, a glorious point, is that like a conquering army, they plunder the Egyptians. Did you know that? When God talks to Moses through the burning bush, he says, you're going to lead the people out. And Moses goes, well, I'm not very good at talking. And God said, well, I am. You're going to do as I tell you. You're going to lead the people out of slavery into a promised land. And he goes, and you're going to plunder the Egyptians. And Moses goes, no, I'm not really good at talking. None of this makes any sense. Can I please have some help? And he went, I'll send you Aaron to help you, but you can do this. And then the 10 plagues happen. And after the 10th plague, all the Israelite women go to their Egyptian slave masters and go, we're about to escape the country. Can we have all of your gold, silver, and clothing? And in a miracle, all the Egyptian women go, yep, take it all. You lot are so pesky having around here with all these plagues. Please take it all. And so they weigh down their carts and their stuff and their backpacks and stuff, take their children, take their animals, and all the gold and the silver and the clothing and the fine silks and stuff of the Egyptians, and take it through the Red Sea. And then the Lord closes the Red Sea behind them, destroying the powers of darkness into new life, into freedom. God meets people. God saves people. And people's reaction, quite naturally, is worship. This is Exodus 15. Then Moses and the people of Israel sang this song to the Lord, saying, I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider he's thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. And Moses goes on worshipping and praising and singing to the Lord. And then when Moses is done, it's not just Moses. It's a prophetess called Miriam, the sister of Aaron. And she's singing too, but she's not just singing. She cracks open a tambourine and she starts to timbre, and the ladies all go, brilliant, tambourine time. Now, I had a look for a tambourine. We used to have one in the box up there. Couldn't find it. I was going to do a little bit of tambourining for you. But they all start to tambourine and they all start to dance and they all start to go, sing to the Lord, for he's triumphed gloriously. The horse and the rider he's thrown into the sea. And they all worship, and the worship they bring, there's not a word in the Bible about how good it sounds. It doesn't say they were good at singing. It doesn't say they were coordinated in singing. It doesn't say anything like that. It's the overflow of their heart because of the salvation they receive and because of who God is. And this is the precedent. This is how it is. This is worship. We worship because of what God has done, and we worship because of who he is. We don't worship because of how we feel. We don't worship because of who we are. Because listen, some days I arrive at church and my heart is bursting with just joy in the Lord. What he has done, what he's accomplished, what I have the privilege of being part of, and all I want to do is worship, and we kick it off and I'm like, yeah, let's go. Other days it's just been a rough night's sleep, or I'm disappointed. And I just feel low, and I'm like, God, and my prayers are like, God, please, come on. I've just learned over the years, that doesn't change how I worship, because he's the same. You know, it's for some reason it's snowing outside. The sun's still shining, it hasn't changed. Yeah, when it's tough, he's the same, and he deserves our worship. The response to who he is worship. Let me just read to you part of Psalm 95. Oh, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker, for he is our God and we are the people of his pasture. We worship because of who he is. You know, it goes on and on throughout the Bible. When people draw near to God, the result is worship. When Ezekiel sees a glorious vision of God on his throne, he worships. He didn't have to read the book and go, wait, what should I do now? What is the correct response? He worships. When Jesus died, resurrected, I'm back, guys. Holes in my hand to show how much I love you. Everything I've said has come to pass. I was dead, now I'm alive. The disciples instinctively worship him. And then he goes and he talks to 500 different people over a course of sort of 40 days or so. And then just before he ascends into heaven, the disciples come to receive kind of one last commission, one last bit of teaching, and they worship him. Then in this incredible scene, Paul and Silas, they've gone on a church planting mission, and it's not really gone to plan. They're in prison. Not done anything wrong and they're in prison. It's not fair. Roman prisons didn't treat you very nice. They'd be hungry, they'd be thirsty, they'd be cold. Certainly would not be a comfortable place to be. And they're keeping everyone up because they're worshipping. They're worshipping because of who he is. And then, like in the book of Revelation, if you know the famous bit at the start, Jesus appears to John, and it's John's old friend, Jesus, who he misses, but he's different. He's got eyes of fire. He's like feet of bronze. It's like a two-edged sword coming out of his mouth, and he's just like resplendent in glory. John bows down and falls to the ground and worships him. And then there's this incredible scene a few pages later in Revelation 7, where there's just everything's going wrong, but there's evil in the world. The persecution has never been as bad as it is, and so bad that the people in charge of the world, the kings and the generals, are going, would the mountains just fall on us? Who can stand in this time of such suffering? This is awful. The answer comes in the next chapter. The people of God can stand. The people of God can stand, and not only can they stand, they can worship. And they sing, holy, holy, holy is the Lord. You've ransomed every tribe and language and tongue from death to life. This is where you brought us, George. You're worthy. And that every nation, tribe and tongue, in every style and language, every beat. Have you ever seen churches from different cultures? They worship slightly differently, but they worship. And it's all around the throne in heaven. For eternity, we will spend worshipping, because when we come close to God, the response is worship. Question often answered with, I think sometimes overly pious answers is like, is worship always musical? Does it have to be musical? Surely worship's our whole life, guys. Come on. Why is it that when we say, let's worship, we then start to sing songs? That's often the case. And I would push back against that a little bit and say, just biblically, it seems that, is worship always musical? No, it doesn't have to always be musical, but it normally is. It often is. In fact, most of the time it is. It seems to be something in us as people, is that when we worship, that overflow in some way often comes out in some sort of musical form. I stand before you as someone that can't really sing. My wife would tell you that probably without you asking her, she'll tell you that. And when I'm just worship the Lord, it comes out in a song. We can flick through the Bible and see again and again. It was Moses and Miriam with the songs and the tambourines. When David defeats the Philistines, he sings. When God gives Hannah a baby after so many years of waiting, she sings. When Mary finds out that she's got the Son of God in her belly, she sings. When Zechariah finds out that his wife's cousin has got baby Jesus in her belly, he sings. Psalm 96, the one straight after the one I read before. Oh, sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, bless his name. Tell of his salvation day to day. Is it always singing? No, it doesn't have to always be singing. Worship, of course, encompasses our whole life. But there is something, it seems, in a musical expression of glory to God that is just naturally how the human responds. So let's not Let's not do that down. Let's not shy away from that. We can belt it out. It's glorious. And do you know what? But I would also push back against any idea that certain expressions of worship are better than others. You know, we can so easily look on sort of the chanting of monks from across like the Middle Ages as being like, well, I don't know. It's not got anything of Matt Redman, does it? I mean, come on. I think like it's so easy to look down on those things, or look down on you know, I've often heard people say, and I would again gently and respectfully push back on this, like, if we really get it, if it's really in our hearts, wouldn't we be dancing and jumping around and really? Maybe you would, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. It's glorious. But this is really my opinion, I suppose, but I think it's more to do with how you express joy than how much love you have for the Lord. I think, and I know some people very well who deeply, deeply love the Lord and deeply express it, but they are not massively demonstrative people who throw their arms up and down. And I would say, I truly believe they are worshipping with their whole heart. I would observe in myself, I love to get my hands up. I love to belt them out. I love it. For some reason, my bottom half doesn't really move. And I don't think that's because I only love God from the waist up. I would probably observe in myself that when someone goes like, wow, time to have a dance, let's dance to the beat. And I'm not a dancer, I don't really like it. And people go, well, if only you were more free. I feel pretty free standing here, thank you. You know, okay, I've been press ganged into dancing. You will find a bit of this, not a lot's going on down here. And I can't really explain it. It's just who I am. You know, and I have tried to sort of, okay, I'll move around. Often someone will come up to me and ask, please kindly stop that. And I think that's okay. Well, it's not for, they're rude, but it's okay. It's okay that I don't, with great coordination and exuberance, express myself. It seems that hands do fly around when I talk, but you might not. So please feel no shame or that you're missing something if, when your heart is overflowing with worship, you don't give it the beans with your arms and your legs. You know, I think that's okay. So I would say let's not do down the importance of music and singing as we worship. But also let's not look down on others who express themselves differently or in a more sedate way. You know, let's belt out worship songs with all our whole hearts, but let's not pretend to be like other people. Does that make sense? The key thing that we must understand is that worship comes from our heart in response to who he is and what he's done. Paul writes in Ephesians 5:19, a beautiful summary of this sermon. Sing and make music from your heart to the Lord. It's because it's the Lord. He's the Lord. It's who he is. He deserves our worship. So we sing because we're humans. And if for you just go, nothing in me ever wants to sit, I just want to sit in silence, in awe and reverence, and that's what's coming out of my heart, then God bless you. Do not feel bad about that whatsoever. But for most of us, it's going to be sung and it's going to be musical because that's just, I think, quite typical of humanity. So what I'd like to do with the time I've got left, because I do want to give us time to worship, is just remind us who we're worshipping. So kind of my teaching on worship, if you like, I'm pausing that here, and we're just going to look at Jesus for a bit, and then we're going to worship him. Because as I said, when we come into encounter with the Lord, the reaction is worship. So let's come into encounter with him now. I want to read some famous words from the New Testament, the Gospel of John, and just look at them together, like how incredible these words are, the meaning in these words, what happened, what they're saying. And let this drive us into worship of the King. Okay, I'm going to read the first 3 verses of the Gospel of John, and then just let's have a look at them, what they're saying. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him, nothing that was made was made. So it starts with in the beginning. We should immediately, if we know our Bible at all, go, oh, in the beginning, that sounds like Genesis. That sounds like the start. That means that before there was time, before there was stuff, matter, before there was space, before there was anything, Jesus was there. Jesus who fed 5,000, Jesus who died on the cross for us, Jesus who said, let the little children come to me, just because you're weak and small and poor, and let you can come. That Jesus who let, when John was feeling just so like emotional and sad, let John just kind of like rest his head on his chest. That Jesus, before there was a molecule, there was Jesus. He was there before, like we watched so many sciencey documentaries recently. James is really into planets and like talk about how this space dust was formed and crushed together to make Jupiter or stars and different. Before that stuff, choose your millions or billions of years, before that stuff happened, there was Jesus. In the beginning, he was there. Genesis talks about how there was just like chaos, just water. And the Spirit of the Lord hovered over water, and he brought order out of this chaos, out of the nothingness brought order and then life. Recently heard a senior biologist say that it's interesting how when a cell dies, with all of our scientific might, we have no way at all of bringing life back into that cell. When something dies, it's dead, it's gone. And it talks about how Jesus created. He brought life where there was no life. This Jesus. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Okay, so we've got Jesus and we've got God the Father. They were together in relationship. And the Word was God. So in all that God is and does through the Old Testament, like Jesus is there. Jesus is part of it. Jesus is holding it together. Jesus is driving things forward. Jesus is in it. He's there in it all, holding it together, directing our steps with grace and love. He's in it, but he is God, but he's also with God. We have this first sort of taste here in this gospel of the Trinity. And we know where this is going. We know he will end up on a cross. On a cross, it's not a beautiful, noble, ornate thing that you put at the front of a building back then. A cross was a agonizing, embarrassing, humiliating thing. You know, his arms were stretched wide, not in a gesture of come to me, or no, like in a gesture of like, I am completely vulnerable, broken, and helpless. He couldn't move his arms. Now, of course, with Jesus says when he gets arrested, and one of his disciples, who Matthew very kindly doesn't say who it was, John says it was Peter, so we know. Peter chops off one of the servant's ears, and Jesus goes, put your sword away. In front of his people arresting him, heals the man's ear. A gesture of kindness and complete mastery, power, control, heals the man's chopped off ear. And he says, people who live by the sword, they die by the sword, but just as you arrest me, do you not think I could call down legion upon legion of angels to stop this? Everything that is happening to me, I'm choosing to let happen because I love you so much. In John 10, Jesus puts it like this. He says, no one's taking my life from me, guys. I'm laying it down. No one's stretching out my arms so I can't do anything. I am letting them stretch out my arms. No one's forcing nails through them. I'm letting them force nails through my arms and my ankles. I am choosing every second of agony so that I can pay the price of sin and shame that you have heaped upon yourself because I love you so much. It's the Jesus that called the universe into being and has been there since before there were pyramids, before there were parrots, before there were pirates, before there were partridges or pear trees. Jesus was there, creating, bringing order with eyes of love, knowing that every sin that every person ever committed, from the old to the young, from the genius to the fool, he would be paying the price for, because he loves you so much. It's that Jesus. It says, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Do you know what strikes me whenever I read that is, Jesus knew. He knew what he was going to go through. And the Father knew as well. Now, I can honestly tell you, and I'm sure any father would say the same, you know, if for some reason someone had to pay a terrible penalty and it had to be me or my child, every time you take me, you hurt me, you take from me, you leave those children alone. But the Father was willing to let the Son go to the cross for us. Of course, we know that death had no claim on him. Of course, we know he rose from the dead. Of course, we know that. But that does not diminish the agony, does not diminish the pain and the shame and the spectacle and what he went through. And Jesus cried out from the cross, Father, why have you forsaken me? Like you've turned your back on me. The Father went through that agony too. Listen to the words of Romans 5 verse 6. While we were still weak, while you were at your worst. Do you remember what you were like at your worst? Like I was horrible. I remember I was pathetic. I was so self-absorbed and insecure and just wrapped up in me. I don't know what you were like. Probably horrible. When you were at your worst, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. This Jesus, the Creator Jesus, died for the ungodly. Skipping a verse, it says, God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, earning nothing, deserving nothing, Christ died for you. Does that give us cause to worship, friends? That should give us cause to worship. That should give us cause to stand in reverent silence and then just sing with whatever we've got inside of us, praises to his glorious name, because that's who he is. We worship because of who he is, not at all because of how we're feeling or we are. And remember, like I said, with whatever he's given you, worship him. It might be exuberant and loud. It might not be, and that's fine. But let's hold nothing back that he's given us in worship. I'd love to invite the worship team up to lead us again. And just as we step in, we understand who he is and we lift up our praises. I want to encourage you, if you feel the Lord laying something on your heart to share, like Mel shared a picture at the start, that might have been for you, it could be a testimony, it could be a tongue, feel free, let's share these things. When you gather together, let each one come with a hymn, a tongue, a revelation. Let's step into that. He is worth it. He's worthy of all our honor and praise. So, Lord, I want to just ask, Lord, as we step into worship, our